Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I have with me today Christian Ray Flores. As I learn more about Christian, he has done. I probably run out of things he's done. Pop star. He does his own shows. He's an entrepreneur. He has his own consulting. Um, I'm probably not doing enough justice there, Christian, because of your bio was so extensive.
Yes,
Um,
I know.
but
It's a little confusing. Yeah.
but I am, lived all over the world. So it's exciting to talk to you today, and welcome to the program.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, Christian, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? And maybe fill in some of the gaps that I had.
Oh, sure. It it's a confusing story, but I'm gonna give you like the hyper fast forward, version of it. So I'm sort of this very strange creature. I grew up on three different continents, four different countries. This is my sixth country and my fourth continent that I've lived in. So,
Yeah.
being in the US now for almost 20 years. But I grew up in Russia, Chile, Germany, Africa, then back to Russia. I lived in Ukraine for a little bit as well before moving to the US. And throughout those years, I've just done quite a few things. But I started off in a very sort of dark place. I was a refugee at age 5 in Chile in a refugee camp, quite literally, with my family before being exiled. So I've sort of experienced quite a bit of hardship, poverty, you know, overcome quite a few things. And what I'm grateful for is that that didn't really stop me, but equipped me to achieve some things as well, right? So I've been very successful in music for about a decade in Eastern Europe. I was one of the biggest pop stars out there, sort of in the post-Soviet space. And I've done quite a lot of philanthropy. I have my roots in the third world, so I love serving the poor. Um, I am an entrepreneur. I've started three businesses, three nonprofits. I'm a Christian. I've started a couple of churches, then ministry. And now I have a couple of businesses and a couple of nonprofits. One is a church here in Austin, Texas. I have a nonprofit called Ascend Mission Fund, and we do work with children in Mozambique, Maputo, the poorest of the poor, and then also some work in Ukraine with sort of war PTSD children. We do art therapy with them. I also have a digital marketing company called Third Drive Media, and we do a lot of consulting and media branding, video, that kind of stuff, websites. And I run a coaching program called Exponential.life, which basically helps purpose-driven professionals to have sort of this high performance life, basically, that is holistic and successful.
Now, that's phenomenal. I for a lot of us in the military and watching some of your clips on Exponential,
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting. We talked about sometimes you prioritize work over wellness
Yes.
and how to, you know, adjust your life to get the most out of both your wellness and your careers. And as the military, sometimes we get so mission focused that
Right.
um, it becomes maybe your number one priority, and then
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
family, faith, and so on down the road.
Hmm.
Have you had many military or anyone who's reached out to you about helping focus their either military career or their post-military career?
We've a little bit, yes. We've done apart from just sort of um, sporadic sort of connections where I can mentor somebody who came out of it and stuff like that and has that kind of history. But we've done a lot of work with Third Drive Media, consulting a company called Applicants Plus for veterans, and it's basically this whole a beautiful startup. This was years ago, so I'm actually not sure exactly where they're at right now, but they were really helping bridge that gap, right? And so I got an education from them about sort of this gap of, wow, one day you're serving your country, you're in tight community, brothers in arms, and you have such purpose and significance, and you have a lot of expertise. Actually, you're trained on all kinds of levels, psychologically, technologically, even, et cetera, et cetera. And then you transition into civilian life, and the skills on the surface don't translate well. That's sort of what I've learned from them. So it's been quite enlightening for me to do some work with them, which I wasn't educated about before.
Right. And can you talk about the exponential? There's four steps or four
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
target lines that you focus on.
Oh yeah, thank you for asking. So Exponential is essentially a coaching program, and the the entry level, the core, sort of, we call it core program, is to sort of help people make 4 different shifts, 4 very, very important shifts for just long-term success. And I'll sort of break it down. You can ask me more questions if I need to. I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but sort of on a high level, the first one's called fuel. And it's basically this idea that oftentimes we just don't realize that we're fueled day by day by day by bad fuel. And if you don't turn it into good fuel, it's not going to take you far
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
life. You know, if you're stressed out, if you're ruminating about the negative, if you're anxious, all these other things, and there's more, right? There's deeper bad fuel than that. But the idea is that we train our clients on how to go from bad fuel to good fuel literally in a day, in less than a day. So every single day, imagine if you have, let's say, 8 hours of sleep and you have 16 hours, it's like 16 chips you can bet on something.
Yeah.
And if you use good fuel, you'll bet them well, you know, and make progress. And the idea is that how amazing is that you know that you can maximize your effectiveness, your creativity, your innovation, your progress every single day, and multiply that by 7 days and then by a month. And you can, you're unstoppable, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the first shift. The second is oftentimes we don't move forward because we just simply don't know where to go. You know, we don't have a direction in life.
Yeah.
So we go in circles, or, you know, and that produces more stress, more anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So what we do is we help our clients say, okay, where are we going to go? Okay, what's the number one priority? How do we break it down into specific steps, and how do we increase your speed? So that's why it's called speed, that second shift, because progress, slow progress versus quick progress makes a big difference in the way you think of yourself, right? So if you can accelerate your progress, oh my gosh, it's life changing. The third shift we do is called resistance, and it's this idea that all of us, even if we want to move somewhere and accelerate our sort of movement in that direction and get momentum, which momentum is huge, we all have these very specific set of limiting beliefs. So it's all in our heads, right? You know, imposter syndrome, I'm going to do it, who you think you are, second guessing. And that I call that resistance, right? It's self-sabotage that every single person is exposed to that. So if you know how it works, you know how to overcome it, then you increase speed and momentum even more, because you're sort of removing these roadblocks, headwinds, so to say, right? And then the fourth one is called radar, and it's basically this holistic view of life. And that's derived from a very, very famous Harvard study, 80 years going on, still going on. And it's the Harvard Happiness Study. That's sort of the nickname it has. And basically what that does is it gives us this very specific, very clear, very simple map of 7 dimensions of life that are the most important for success. And we can self-assess on a regular basis. So we get to this place of clarity and holistic success, rather than, hey, I want to go about whatever, you know, whatever, fill in the blanks, right? And what that gives us is this long-term macro level stability, anti-fragility, success, health, you know, joy, all of those things.
Yeah. No, you know, that's, so just for some background on me. So I finished my career working at what we call the Human Resources Command. So I would just help assign doctors and medical officers all over the world, right?
Okay.
Various locations. And when I saw what you're doing, especially with Exponential, it is something that I hope I can spread amongst those who, you know, I'm not an important person. I just know people due to the nature of the job, right?
Right.
and so we in the military, a lot of us are very step by step, structure based. And so when I saw you had these 4 shifts, as someone who's coming out into the unknown of civilian life, it really broke it down and made it easy to understand and how to focus your life. And I think a lot of us, as we leave the service, we miss that structure. We miss that, you know, these are your left and right limits. Let's figure out how you can organize through here. What steps do I take? And, you know, whether it's sequential order or Am I hitting the checklist? And as I started to transition out, I know I'm not the only one who is feeling this, as you go from a very structured system to go figure it out.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm hoping that when people watch this, especially the military folks who are transitioning out or thinking about it, or spouses, um, as they see this, they gravitate toward your program, because I think it could really help a lot of people. I mean, you really, from imposter syndrome to feelings of doubt to what do I do next? I think this really hits home with a lot of veterans, Christian.
Really? Wow. That's really good to hear.
Yeah. This is one of the main reasons I definitely want to talk to you today. Um, I don't. This doesn't mean like a joke like COVID or anything, but I'm hoping the message spreads to those coming out like COVID, where
Yeah.
it's hitting the different parts all over the world, and really, people latch onto this and your system. I think it could help so many military
Really?
service members
Wow.
transitioning out.
I never thought of that, but I agree. I really do. And I think,
Yeah.
for me, the way I sort of came about it, the genesis of Exponential was I just dealt with a lot of uncertainty early on
Hmm.
in my childhood. When you move 4 countries by age 7, that's challenging, right?
Yeah.
And so that you're disoriented, and so it sort of built on that, and then built on, okay, my early success in my mid 20s, and how I realized that, oh my gosh, I have these outer skills or outer game that are
Hmm.
really high level, but my inner game, it doesn't support it.
Right.
So you can even be successful professionally, and then really because your character and other dimensions of your life are just not up to par to that professional training, the whole thing goes south, right? So
Right. For sure.
you need a holistic view of life, and so I became very interested in that early on in my. It's probably in hindsight, it's a bit early, right? In my mid 20s,
Hmm.
mid 20s, you usually don't think about stuff like that. But
For
I think I
sure.
was hurting so bad
Yeah.
I became very, very interested. So I studied sort of the latest research. There's been a lot of breakthrough research in great science these days in the last 20 years in the space. And then I eventually sort of transitioned into interviewing some of the top experts on the planet on these things. And I'm really grateful because I feel like I have these very specific, very structured, um, high leverage sort of set of tools for people to use. And every week, I get to I get to teach people that on these group coaching sessions, and I see sort of the light bulbs coming out. And when people especially use it in their life, they just go, "This is so uncomplicated. I didn't. How is it possible that I didn't have this before?" That kind
Yeah.
of thing.
No, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Well, that's fantastic. So just to take a step back, you mentioned you moved around, 4 different countries or
Hmm.
continents, even, right, before you're
Yeah,
by seven.
three continents, 4 countries. Yes.
It's it's incredible, and so obviously you faced a lot of, or you built up a lot of resilience at a young age.
Yeah.
Um, is that something you carried with you, especially through your early professional career, or is it something that you maybe it was more of a struggle early on, and then you developed it with because I mean you're one of the most popular pop stars in the world, and that's not an everyday story for a lot of people. How did you manage that?
I think I've thought about it quite a bit. And by the way, I'm about to publish a book called Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America, which sort of plays into a little bit into your audience because, man, you guys do amazing work, and you sacrifice
Thank
so
you.
much for this country. And as a grateful immigrant, I moved here, and I was just I couldn't stop. I can't stop actually my enthusiasm and gratitude on what has been built in America. And in the current sort of climate, there's so much America bashing going on. And I can't help but think that as a veteran, that's gotta be that's gotta be weird and painful. And So anyway, I was just thinking about that right now and going, maybe your audience can read the book, because I think they'll be encouraged and feel that they've played a significant, powerful, heroic role even in the peace in the country that this is. It's an amazing country. It's my favorite place on earth, and but this is all to say as a backdrop to your question of resilience, right? And I would say yes and no, in the sense that there's a lot of resilience built in when you go through hardship. It's like we are by nature resilient beings, both emotionally, spiritually, biologically, even, right? Like when you go to the gym, that's what you do. You tear a little
Mhm.
bit of muscle and you grow more muscle because of it. Same thing with emotional resilience and anti-fragility, which is another term. That is basically, the anti-fragility is the term where you face hardships, and not only do you sort of stay put, but you actually grow from it, right? Another term for it is, it's called post-trauma growth, right? And what I've learned through that is that you can be, and I don't want to take this lightly, with especially speaking to an audience of veterans. You can experience PTSD, and I'm not an expert by any means, right? But there's that's the shadow side of our natural wiring to be actually post-traumatically grown as people, right? So PTSD is the shadow of post-traumatic growth. This is for what I know, and again, with a caveat, I'm not I'm not an expert, but what I think,
Yeah, no worries.
based on my and I've seen civil war, I've been in a refugee camp, I've seen the fall of the Soviet Union, tanks in the streets. I've seen bombings, myself. So I was not in the military, but I've seen some stuff as well, And like my dad was in a
Oh yeah.
concentration camp, and I have memories of that. My first childhood memories standing outside a concentration camp, and my mom was just trying to pass food through a guard to my dad, and the food never got to him, and all of that stuff, right? And all these really painful things. I think there's two things that come to mind. One is we become the story we tell ourselves. And if you make meaning out of something that is painful, confusing, traumatic, that actually can change the trauma into fuel. Um, and if the other thing is community, and if you build strong communal relationships, that actually changes the story and how you feel about the challenging times you've been through, right? So all of that to say that when I was this immigrant, I was living in Russia at the time, sort of darker skin. I look Latin. I don't look Russian, and there's a little bit of racism in Russia. And I'm saying that, sarcastically. There's a lot of racism in Russia. So I never fit in anywhere. Like I feel like I was this outsider. Like I just don't fit in. Period.
Mhm.
And I think maybe, maybe I can ask you that. Is that how it feels to come from military life to civilian life? That I don't no longer see how I fit in. Would that be accurate to a
Y-
degree?
It is unique, to say the least. I share a story with some of my friends. So when we first moved here to Kentucky, middle of Kentucky, a little south of Louisville, um, I was talking to my daughters play soccer, and I was talking to one of the dads, right? And I had always lived on post, like, so I was always around military. We all had the same haircuts and everything else. And I said, oh, how long have you been here? And he's like, my whole life. Like,
Wow,
and it was like, whoa, yeah, like it didn't even click, right? Like, yeah, I just moved here 6 months ago.
that's right.
This
Yeah.
is all they've known. And I can tell you where I really see it the most, even aside from myself, right? Like if I take an, because I think one of the benefits of being in the service, right, is kind of it's a melting pot
Yeah.
of different people, different cultures, everything,
Hmm.
right? Which might be a little different for the outside in some cases. Um, One of the ways that I felt the most and it impacted me the most was knowing we were going to live in an area that wasn't military, and my kids were going to go to school in a non-military, not off of base, and for them to try to fit in with kids who've grown together their whole lives, right? Develop
That's
their
right.
cliques.
Yep. Yeah.
And so knowing that, I try to get them into sports as much
Mm-hmm.
as possible so that at least when that happened, they had like an in, right? They
Yeah.
had sports to connect. Um, for me, it was I had to almost hide my personality that I've developed through 20 years in the military.
Okay.
Not saying it's good or bad, but in the military, you're more direct, you're more, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
mission focused, step by step. And I've had to step outside of my comfort zone to adapt to essentially a different way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you're spot on. It is hard. And even like when I looked at um, employment, right? And you mentioned it earlier, where some of the skills don't adapt. I could have lead, 4,000 person soldier battalion into combat, logistics, administration, all this other stuff that in the
Right.
military makes sense. But if I apply for a managerial role of, in charge of 20 people at one location, it's different systems, it's
Right.
different
Yeah. Yeah.
HR,
Uh-huh.
and it's overwhelming. I think
That's right. Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to adjust.
I'm so glad you're saying that because it does. I feel it does seem that there's a lot of connecting points that are common, right? So, like we call it when you grow up overseas, and I think a lot of the military can see that as well.
Mhm.
That your kids, if you're deployed everywhere, your kids are probably third culture kids.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've heard this term, but it's basically it's if you come from America, let's say, but you're in Singapore,
Mhm.
and you are not Singaporean, but you're not fully American either. So it's a third
Mhm.
culture kid. And essentially, you develop this very interesting, very flexible psyche, very adaptable, very creative. And yet also you don't fit anywhere. Like you're just not local, period.
Right.
And my theory and the way I've worked it personally in my life is that I've sort of managed, and I think that's part of the thing that I help with Exponential well. I've managed to sort of reinterpret, translate my uniqueness and almost not fitting in into some sort of unique value and superpower. And so, for example, what you're saying is, look, I can lead a battalion, and in the level of what is at stake, right?
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're in the military, doing the work you're doing is insane. It doesn't even compare to being a manager of 20
Mhm.
of a team of 20 people. It doesn't even compare. It's not even the same vicinity of that, and yet people have trouble sort of translating. And I would say that yes, we need to adjust, right? We need to adapt to the needs of our local context, whatever that is, when it comes to work. But also, what we could do is we can recraft, recalibrate our story, because there's a level of character and fortitude, decisiveness, that comes from being able to lead a battalion.
Mhm.
That is a superpower that doesn't even compare. So how do you translate that? Where do you look like? How does that translate into a resume? How do you look for that capability that is clearly superior and actually more rare than your average sort of middle of the road manager of 20?
Mhm.
How can you create not only a resume, but how can you find a path where this quality is not a waste? It's not out of place. As a matter of fact, it's the competitive advantage. And to me, that is the big sort of question. But I believe it's incredible the value that can be created if you amazing.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant insight, and I I feel if more people could use that and help translate that, it would maybe help them with their imposter syndrome, like you mentioned
Yes,
earlier.
yeah,
Um, because it is different. I mean,
it is, yeah. But I think honestly, I think anybody can do that. I really
mhm,
believe that, and obviously, I wouldn't be coaching people if I didn't believe that. But I think anybody can do that, and I say that to you from personal experience, right? So I'll
mhm,
give you a in your mind. Can we do that together as an
Yeah.
exercise?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, so for example, I come in dark skinned with an accent into Russia. Everybody's sort of, it's still the USSR. People are scared. I'm a free thinker. People are not free thinkers. I'm
Mhm.
creative. People are not. I get it. I go, you know what? I went to college. Some falls apart. I'm going to do music. Well, like, I have zero chance of success on paper, right?
Mhm.
But I go, you know what? I think I'm capable of creating music that is in demand now. Western music was very much in demand when the Iron Curtain fell.
Mhm.
And I have an exotic look, and I can combine this and this and this and this. And that's actually a competitive advantage.
Hmm.
And I was not wrong. So I was on national television like within a year.
Wow.
Then I take that and I go, okay, so I know I've built on this music career, and eventually, in about a decade, I got honestly a little bored with it, and I became a Christian. I want to help people spiritually, and I go, how do I do that? Well, I can speak. I can if I can perform in front of 10,000 people, I can probably speak in front of 100 or 300 or 500.
Right.
It translates. It's a very different space, but it translates because I don't have this stage fright
Mhm.
thing. The other thing is, okay, if I was able to write some hit songs that were sung and loved by millions, it means I understand culture. It means I understand the pulse of a generation, so to say. So that can be translated into a culture of a company. If I build a business, let's say in music production or marketing, I know people, right?
Mhm.
I've been in so many different countries that I can read them well. So I can probably train people and coach people, and also I can help people tell their stories because from all these travels, all the show business thing, even when I preach on the Sunday service at church, I'm a storyteller. I'm a master storyteller.
Mhm.
Okay, I can start a marketing company. And on paper, you go, why would you start a marketing company? You don't do anything about marketing. Yes, I do. I can tell stories. Marketing is storytelling. Marketing is reading people's um, needs and what the triggers they have and what motivates them and all of that, right? So what
Yeah.
I'm telling you is that that translates if you do the work, and if you sort of just at least suspend disbelief and try to de-stress your life and be creative and work with people that believe in you and can help you take something that on paper doesn't translate and make it into actually a competitive advantage.
Wow.
You know?
And so, did you always have someone in your that supported you to foster that way of thinking? Because I can imagine it's for a lot of people scary to
Yeah,
make
it
that
is
leap.
scary. Yeah, and I think honestly, now that I think of it in the context of veterans, I've noticed that there are businesses where they're owned by veterans and they hire veterans. And I
Mhm.
don't think they're just doing it out of, hey, I want to help a brother out. I don't think it's not a handout. It's these people know the superpowers.
Mhm.
They just say, oh, I know you're valuable. I can translate that and train you to sort of implement that in my space, in my industry. But in my life, I think yes and no. So, for example, when I had my first success in show business, I was successful, but I was successful without community and without coaching and mentoring. And I lasted like 5 years before I burnt out and became clinically depressed. You
Mm.
know, so you're right. You need community and you need mentorship. And then eventually that changed, and I surrounded myself by very wise people. And I was very lucky as well. So I've sort of developed, even in the coaching program now at Exponential, we have cohorts, right?
Mhm.
It's not just one on one. We have a cohort of up to 7 people, and they collectively provide sort of this forward motion, emotional support, empathy, friendship, and they become incredibly wise collectively towards each other. I just love that, and I think that's like almost like an integral part for success. If you don't have community, you don't evolve, you don't overcome obstacles well at all.
Mhm.
But if you have it, oh my gosh, you can be unstoppable.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I have so my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they're both from Mexico, moved to LA early. Um, my wife born and raised in and around Santa Monica, Burbank kind of area.
Oh yeah.
And I will tell you that as someone who like myself who feels very comfortable in the military, in very
Yeah.
structured system.
Structured system. Yeah.
Um, I gain a lot of motivation to even try to start this podcast to do other things from them. I mean, they came here at 16, 17, 18 years old,
Yeah.
got citizenship, raised a family, learned a language, my wife is amazing, nurse practitioner, all this stuff. And when I doubt myself, they're there to back me up and support me, my family too. But, for this example, you know, they had the courage to pursue something and then had the family support to help them see it through. And I think I find that to be probably a connecting theme amongst successful entrepreneurs is one, they at a certain point they're no longer necessarily afraid of failure. Maybe
Yes.
they're maybe more afraid to be stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have people there who support them no matter how maybe crazy their goals might be. Like you said, on paper, did you really think you're going to be a pop star in Russia? And that was your superpower, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I find that amazing. And so did that, when you left that and you went toward more like the ministry,
Mm-hmm.
that's to me, from an outsider, that looks like a pretty big shift, right? From
Yeah.
celebrity life to one
Yeah.
that
Huge.
maybe is.
Huge. Yeah.
So what was that like, and what brought you that way?
Thanks for asking. I on the last chapter of the book that I'm actually getting ready to publish. There's a chapter on the pursuit of happiness
Hmm.
as a core American value. And I love that pursuit of happiness is sort of weaved into the fabric of the American culture very uniquely. Like if the founders put it in there, it's a powerful thing. So I sort of tell the story that I'm on a train ride and I am going on tour. I have my crew. I traveled with probably like 20 people, entourage, that kind of thing,
Hmm.
and multi-city tour. And I'm going to yet another city. And I'm sitting there and I'm just looking out the window and had a very distinct, almost, it's not audible, but it was this aha moment, this thought. And the question was, is this all there is for me?
Hmm.
Which is a strange, on paper again, right? It's a
Hmm.
strange question to ask yourself if you are living the life that only a small fraction of artists and musicians ever reach.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's an important question, and I struggled with it on that train ride, is that I realized part of me goes, "Are you serious? Like you're living the dream, dude, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then part of me goes, "You know what? I am living the dream of a stereotypical artist who wants to do just one thing, which is
Mhm.
great and amazing, and some of the best people out there are that's what they are. All they want to do is music.
Yeah.
But if I ask myself honestly, the story of my life, sort of this the layers of my life, the tapestry, has given me other things and urges and leanings and abilities that are not being used. And if your abilities are not fully realized in this one profession, and you go and you stick with it because it's a paycheck, because you have status, you have respect, you have all kinds of things, right? The world
Hmm.
rewards you for your outer game, but your inner game is not completely satisfied.
Right.
The longer you stay there, the harder it is to get out and the harder it is to flourish because you're living a very incongruent life. And for me on that train ride, what I was feeling is like, I'm like traveling, across 15 different countries, all that Eastern European thing, but I grew up all over the world.
Right. Right.
And if I project 20 years, I don't want to be on that circuit for 20 years. It doesn't inspire me.
Right.
I have a master's degree in economics. I speak 4 different languages. I love philanthropy,
Yeah.
and I don't get to do it this way here. I love Jesus, and I don't get to help people with that. I I want to see the world. I want to expand beyond sort of this. In my specific thing, it's just a narrow thing, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, you know what? And I want to start a family. I was single at the time, and I knew that I didn't want to have a family and especially raise children with this kind of lifestyle because it's going to really diminish my opportunities as a father, as a husband, but also really mess up the kids because the kids of celebrities are messed up. A
Yeah.
lot. It's so much pressure. So all these other layers of me were there, and if you're not self-aware of those layers, if you don't ask yourself that question, you sort of go, well, I just go with the flow, right? Okay, I got this
Right.
job at this company, and it's a paycheck. I have a mortgage, 2.5 kids, a wife, a dog, a Labrador, whatever, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now I need to maintain this, and maybe and even harder is it if it's actually a highly successful career. So the cost, the overhead goes up, right? All of that stuff, and the
For sure.
lifestyle, and from in my specific situation, it was one of those things. You don't walk away from fame and fortune that way, and I just honestly had, I don't know where it came from, but I'm like, you know what? For all the money, it's actually not worth it. I want to be happy and fulfilled, and I want to do what I was built to do beyond this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me a little bit of time to transition out of show business. But I basically said to my management company, my crew, I'm like, you know what? I'm sort of bored here. And they were thought that I was crazy because I did literally walked away from millions of dollars. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you start with ministry doesn't pay at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I was happy, and it was not the only thing that I did. And in the long run, that was a great decision because I tapped into all the things that made me unique, and I was able to sort of build on that. So I've had like 5 different careers in 30 years, and all of them built upon the previous one, and then all of them melded together as a superpower for the coaching that I do now,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very unique set of skills, experiences. I get, I if I coach somebody and I say, look, I have first of all known success myself and built several companies myself. Second, okay, no certification or education will ever replace experience, right? So
Right.
if I've done life and been side by side with people who have gained tens of millions of dollars, with athletes who are going to the most demanding Olympic level things, and I've helped them perform and do well. If helped somebody go from complete burnout to building tens of millions of dollars worth of fortune, or somebody who was on heroin, literally with almost zero probability of survival, to actually get clean, get functional, get married, be a professional. Like I have these countless experiences over and over and over again, and on all of that, I wouldn't have gained if I didn't make that decision on that train ride,
Right.
right? And I think for me, the encouragement then for somebody who is coming out of the military is like, look, you've been exposed to some amazing stuff. You have skills that most people will never develop. You have resilience that most people can't even imagine if they have it or not, because they haven't been put in situations to discover what they are. And I think, take some time and breathe and believe in yourself and explore, what does all of this together mean for you? And how can you show up in the world and add so much value that you're not even competing because you're beyond competition? How does that look like? It's painful. There's a lot of unknowns. But
Mm-hmm.
if you tap into that question and make some bold decisions, I don't think you'll regret it, basically. That's what I'm saying.
Wow. Christian, I'm just talking to you today. You're truly an amazing person. I've recently read in a book called "Ego is the Enemy," and one of the chapters is the disease of me,
Yeah.
and it talks about how that can be detrimental to a lot of people, and and obviously the book highlights people who've pursued passions to help
Yeah.
others, and you really are a great example of that, and it's one of the reasons this whole conversation has been great for me, because the love you share and the growth you share and the fulfillment you get from seeing others be successful,
Yeah.
um it's fantastic. I mean, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, and not even just for any military members, but just for people in general. I mean, there's a lot of negativity in the world,
Yeah.
and you are really putting a lot of positivity out there. So thank you for that. Um, so I've taken up a lot of your time. I just want to close with, before I ask you about your book real quick. Um, Besides your book, do you have any advice or any final words or inspiration for anyone who's maybe on the fence and thinking about taking that next step with their lives and kind of pursuing their passions?
I would say, uh, I would say yes. I would say this. If you think you don't fit in, that's a good thing. Find your unique set of talents and giftedness and passions. And if you just take, if you take the time and the effort and almost like the emotional pain to actually discover those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I know you will find something just exceptional, and you have served your country, if you're especially in the military, and thank you for that. We're all beneficiaries of that. I'm a grateful immigrant, and there's a reason why a lot of the big transformative businesses in America were developed by World War II veterans, I believe. You know, these are people who went through just unimaginable things.
Yeah, sure.
And so many of them, and even not all of them veterans, but even Holocaust survivors, for example, right? People
Mm-hmm.
that went through things that are just off the charts. Many of them went on to build the future of this country. And I believe you can be the future of this country if you just allow yourself to say, yeah, all of these experiences, all of these leanings, these training, these muscles that I have, they are here for a reason that is beyond just the military. That they're here to serve humanity. Just take the time and explore those, basically.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christian. And I'll be sure to have all of your links in the description so people can reach out to you for whether it's Exponential or in your personal page, your podcast, everything else. But
Thank you. Yeah.
when do you have an anticipated date on when you think your book will be available for publish?
It's going to be probably the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, part of the reason why my wife actually is the one who made me write the book, because I just share that's excitement for years,
Yeah,
and she's like, you have to write this down, and I said no for a while for a number of reasons. One of them is being like, people are going to perceive this as a political thing, and it's not a political thing. It's just a
mm-hmm.
values thing, and so because of the election, right? She was like,
Yeah,
okay, now you have to write it because you want to add a positive voice. So I'm trying to get it out before the election, maybe September, something like that. But if you go to this URL, bigreasonstoloveamerica.us, it's basically this page that's going to take you to, hey, we'll give us your email and we'll let you know when it hits the Amazon or wherever
for
you buy
sure.
books, and you can sort of leave your email and you'll be the first to know, basically. So big reasons to
Awesome.
love America.us. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely put that link in there as well. So,
Yeah.
but Christian, thank you so much. I really, you didn't have to do this. I am truly honored for you to come on and talk today, and hopefully, for my listeners, a lot of the veterans out there who listen to you, they find a source of motivation
Yeah.
and get them through this transition in their lives. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Bye.